That's better. Hey folks, welcome back to another video. This is video 2 on the Voyager 1200. I think you're going to get a lot of enjoyment out of this video, because in this video I fix stuff, I break stuff, and I fix that. So I think you'll like that a lot. But what we're going to get done in this video is essentially kind of out of the typical order that I normally do things, and I want to apologize for that in advance. So just bear with me as we go through the video. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. The objective in the first video was to get a good assessment of the block and the cooling system, because this cooling system was pretty much rusted out. And so what we did in that video was we got this manifold off and looked up inside these ports, which are capped off right now. I'll explain that here in a minute. And saw all that junk inside of it, and all the junk that was inside of this manifold that goes up into that spot. And so we took a look at that and said, oh boy, but then ended up doing some flushing with both some just static water, tap water from a pitcher and a funnel down through the top. And then we did that, and then I ended up doing it under some hose pressure and flushed it out a little bit more. So that's where you saw that part as far as the last cooling system bits on that video. What I did do off camera that you didn't see and I talked about was I did pull the water pump, and it was in pretty sad shape. And it's not in the greatest shape right now. The bearing feels good, and I'm not 100% sure on the mechanical seal. I'm not sure if it had been leaking. The weep hole doesn't really show any evidence of any like trails of stuff coming out of it. With all that cruddy, rusty water in there, I am suspect of this mechanical seal in here. So what are we going to do about it, if anything? Reached out to my buddy Taz at AZV65, and I emailed him pictures of the pump, and he said he is pretty sure that he has a mechanical seal kit that'll fit that pump. He's usually pretty good about that stuff, so if he comes back and says, yes, I have a mechanical seal, but I don't think there's any problem with the bearing at all. What I need is a new mechanical seal. There is no reason why we can't break this apart, just like the Honda ones. I've done 2 of those already. I have the special tools where I could simply make them, if they're a little different, to push this out and do all the work I need to do. So I think that's in the future. Might do that as a separate video, might not. The interesting thing is, I was reading some forum posts. Everybody was saying these are unrebuildable. Now, I'm going to prove them wrong, hopefully, but we'll see what happens with that. So I'll keep you updated as we go through this video, maybe, depending on how fast I get a response from that. I will keep you abreast of that information on the water pump. And we had one teensy-weensy, itty-bitty problem with that water pump deal. Yeah. And through the magic of editing and some time, we have ourselves a new rebuilt water pump with a new mechanical seal. There is a lot more to this story, which I can't cover in this video. There'll be a separate video coming out on this water pump. It tells you the whole story of how I destroyed one and saved another. Let's get back on this bike. We got to get this installed, and we can move forward and do some testing, get everything as far as the fluids going, and maybe even fire this thing up. All right, finally. God, I was able to reach into one of the ports and twist the impeller. You got to get it exactly right. I didn't think it would be that close, but it is. Pretty tight tolerance between that slot and that flat piece that it holds, it drives it with off the oil pump. So, oh well, let me get this button back up. We got it done. And of course, like anything else, that was more difficult than it needed to be, but it's very tight down in there. But I did get it in, and I tested it by putting my finger back in on the inside of the hole closest to the impeller. I can move the impeller and feel it engaged with the oil pump, so we're good there. I have a new O-ring on the cover of the water pump itself, and a new O-ring on the body of it that slips into the block. That's the oil side. So speaking of oil, I need to get oil in this because we want to do a couple of tests. But before we do that, we have to button up the rest of the places where the golden liquid droplets could actually escape. And that's down in here, which is the oil feed line, that one that goes from up to there and up to there. Up to there, down to there, up to there. So it feeds the top end of the motor. That needs to go back in. Before that goes back in, we got to put the manifold back in. But right now I have the block full of coolant, And I wanted to keep it that way, so we're going to have to refill it, because I'll tell you what we're going to do. See, you can see the top of those holes filled with coolant. Now the reason why I did that was to prevent further corrosion. Plus the coolant itself is a anti-corrosive chemical, and it'll help clean that out. It's been sitting in there about a week and a half now, and it hasn't gone down. I mean, the other side looks a little lower, but I think there may have been an air bubble and it finally came up. You know, that sort of thing. There's no drippage, no leakage. I don't believe there's any problem with the top end as far as the head gasket goes. And that's where I'm going with this conversation here. A viewer mentioned something about he'd be concerned about a head gasket issue. And I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's unlikely. But we're going to test that. To test it, we're going to leave these top ports open the way they are right now and leave the spark plugs in and get the oil side of it set, because I don't crank a motor over without oil in it. And we're going to crank the motor over and see if we get any bubbles out of there. But I'm going to have to drain the coolant first and then refill it, like I said, because we're going to pull these caps out, put the manifold in with the new O-rings, get that bolted up. Then we can put that oil, you know, bypass, whatever you want to call it, the oil feed for the top end down there back up with new banjo washers. And then once that's all in, we can just cap the bottom of this off, refill it with coolant, and I'm going to do that test. So this will just take me a few minutes to do, hopefully, and then we can get it to that point. I foresee this probably not going too well. Well, that's not bad. Sure doesn't look bad. A couple of particles or particulate come out. Shouldn't really be anything in here, or maybe it's just a little bit, yeah. Yeah, that coolant looks pretty good. I wonder how it looks inside the block, though. That would be interesting to look at now, wouldn't it? Well, that's not terrible. A little bit of crud in there still, but that ain't bad. I mean, come on, seriously. Compared to what it was before, not bad at all. So I think with repeated use, as far as coolant flowing through it at operating temperature, and he drains it a couple times in the future and replaces the coolant, then I think that'll clear out real well. So that looks a lot better than it did, of course. So let's do the other one off camera, and then we'll come back and get that manifold in. Okay, that's the old one, and you can see the main problem I have with this is so thin. That'd be number one. Yeah, and remember how rotten that, or plugged up that number one opening was in there. This is the one that came, and I just got it out of Evapo-Rust overnight and washed it all out in soap and water and so forth, and it came out pretty good. There are a couple of small spots that I don't like on it. You can see it's got some corrosion along the edge of that, which is almost breaking through the edge of that, the outer edge, the face, and a tiny, tiny bit on number one. I'm going to fix this one up because that's the only spot on this that's really kind of nasty. I'm going to solder that in. I'm going to build that up with some solder, but we're going to fix that up and make it good. We're going to definitely use this one. It's in much better shape overall. And that came with a lot of parts, the steel parts, not with the thermostat housing, that was separate, but this came with all the different hoses and stuff. And I forgot to mention, with the thermostat housing came a thermostat that was inside of it. Now that thermostat is in pretty nice shape. I'm going to test this. It's an 82 centigrade thermostat. We're going to test that traditionally done in boiling water with a thermostat or thermometer. You know what I'm saying. Do it that way. The spring is good. I haven't taken this apart yet. Probably should. I mentioned that before. Safety squints engaged. I think we'll be able to do this with the pen torch. This is our target area right here. There's another one down this one too. If this works, I'll do it off camera. If it doesn't work, we might just use epoxy. All right, this is the old school solder from Dad's old stash. This came back from the Northeast from our great adventure up there. My mom sold her house, and so I took this. You know, this is the good stuff. So what we're going to do is just give this a little preheat here and see what we can do. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'll screw it up completely. So there's how that turned out. That came out pretty good. I can't really fill it all in. You'd be chasing your tail, going down a rabbit hole trying to get all the way to the edge. Mainly I wanted to fill up where that O-ring depression, or that pressed area, transitions with the larger part of the pipe at the end. It came out real nice, and I also did this one, which was actually in pretty worse shape. It had pitting all around the O-ring, pretty much about 270 degrees of it, so I filled it with solder and I got that all cleaned out. If this thing would focus, it'd be nice. Okay, test number 1. Test number 2, by the way, is a regular compression test. We're not going to do that later. But this test number 1, 1.1 I guess, because 1.2 be the other side. Okay, so I'm going to turn the power on. I got oil in it. I got everything back together. I'm not going to crank it long. Contact. Okay, that looks good there. And I'm going to look at the other one with you here. So over there. All right, I don't want to spin it anymore because that water pump, as you know, is dry. But it's not going to cause a problem because we very often run these things in a little bit by hand. As I mentioned, well, I have mentioned in this video, it'll be in the other video where I describe what happened to the damn thing in the first place and how I fixed it. So I would say it passes this test without any problem whatsoever because we would definitely be seeing bubbles. I don't believe we have any head gasket issue. It spins over nicely. The oil light went out, so that's good. It's developing pressure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and redrain this and have it empty. And then what we have to do is we got to put these, I'm going to do most of this stuff off camera. It's impossible to show you really. It's too tight in here. I'm going to put those 2 metal pipes that go up on the top here with new O-rings, the ones that stick up. And then we're going to start working on getting the radiator in, I believe. We'll just go ahead and do the bottom side here first. Then we'll do the top side, thermostat housing. I haven't tested the thermostat yet. We got to do that too, but we'll do that here in a little bit. Got to get the radiator in, but before we do that, we got to put this radiator hose, or I should say the water pump line, the hard line that goes to a small piece, which I do have a new one of. So I think we'll use the magic light for that. Works every time. I'm going to reuse this coolant. There's no reason not to, but I strained it through coffee filter, so this is the crap that came out of it. That I cleaned out before I drained the initial drainage when I had the plugs in, not when I had the manifold in. So this is what came out of it. So we definitely did get a bunch of extra crap out of it, which is nice. And you can see from those shots it looked pretty good in there. So this is what I do, you know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this coolant, it just needs to be filtered. I took the radiator and I should have filmed some clips of the what the inside looked like. I just didn't think of it. You can get the picture. It looked pretty much like the inside of these tubes and the inside of the block with all that rust and crud. And so I brought it down to Sarasota Radiator. It's pretty much the only radiator place left in the area. A gentleman calls me a couple hours later and says, "Can you get another radiator?" And I said, "Maybe." That's not what I wanted to hear, but he said, "There's 2 leaks. There's one leak down by where that fan switch goes in that I showed you in video 1. And another leak, I forgot exactly where he said. It was in one of the tanks. Now that's an aluminum radiator. It may be fixable, but he wouldn't guarantee it at all, and he wouldn't trust it because there's a lot of other, you know, rust inside there that's stuck into little nooks and crannies, and over time it's probably going to corrode the aluminum out. He said, "Get another radiator is your best bet." I have not gone down to pick it up again, you know, yet rather. I don't know if I will, but I did find a radiator online on eBay. Comes with the fan and everything. That has been shipped and it's on the way. So again, this is another thing we're going to update you on as this video number 2 progresses. All right, folks, the radiator's in, and basically this is how I feel about it. The way he's looking right now. That's the way, yeah, I agree. That's how I feel about this radiator. This radiator is a big pain in the ass. I thought the Magna radiator was a little tricky to get off and back on. This son of a gun is a prick. You need 6 hands to do it, and then it doesn't want to fit right. What I did was, let me back up a little bit. I did ultimately put the exhaust system back on before the radiator because you can't get at the bolts. I think I said before the order of operations is going to be put the radiator on and then do the exhaust. You can't really do that, obviously. And what allows you to do it is the fact that you already have the pipes bolted up to the water pump. Those are the things you can't get at with the exhaust system in place. So since I had both of those pipes and I installed, and I had the one going up to this manifold right here already done with the clamps and everything and a new hose, I said, well, I can put the exhaust system on. Wasn't too difficult at all, and I've got new crush washers, the donuts rather, in the exhaust for the exhaust seals, no problem. Then I went to put the radiator in. Didn't film any of that because there would have been a lot of bad words. I put a new O-ring into the fan switch. Took that out and took a look at it. Did not test it. We are going to test the thermostat for sure. I need to know about that. Being it's a replacement radiator, I just decided to go with the fan switch that was in it. And I did pressure test this radiator. I rigged up a homemade pressure tester for this thing to make sure that this radiator wasn't leaking. So this radiator is good. All fleshed out and it looks great inside of it. So I'm real happy about that. Now speaking of fan and radiator, in video 1 I mentioned the ground that is for the radiator fan, which comes up right up here, and that's basically where the ring connector on the green wire was sitting. And I thought about it, and how it works is that ring connector gets bolted up with this, which bolts the fan to the radiator body. And then the radiator body bolts up to the bike, but it has rubber grommets. But it does have top hat washer, so you know you have a little bit of a connection there. But I'm thinking that doesn't seem like enough. Well, the replacement radiator came with a piece of wire hooked up to it. I went, oh yeah, either somebody added this or this is the way it's supposed to be. So I put a new ring connector on that, and we're going to go right up to here, which is a frame ground. And it's going to be just fine for this. So that'll give me a good fan ground. Taken about 2.5 hours to get done because of all the problems I had. I do have it in place. Right over there is your upper radiator hose sticking through. But what goes into that is the thermostat body, that big housing, that manifold that goes from 1 into 2 or 2 into 1, depending on how I look at it. And then those go into these guys here. So that's the next steps we have to do. But before I do that, caps on, run the wires properly to the spark plug. Before I do that, I'm going to change the spark plugs. Now I thought I was going to do a compression test, and I've decided not to do that because I just don't have any indication that there's a problem. And we're just going to run it. But I am going to change the plugs out. We're going to put proper NGKs in, which I do have in stock. I wanted to make sure right now that I could actually get these spark plugs out. Remember, we had that leakage up top there above that level of the spark plugs, which by the way are recessed into the head. But we had that area there leaking from there because of that hole there. So this is not uncommon. Pretty much every modern vehicle has recessed spark plugs, whether you have wires going to them or coil packs that stick down into them. And when manufacturers do that, they provide drains inside the head, so in case anything gets down next to the spark plug, it doesn't fill up with water, get misfire codes and stuff. In this case, the drain is right here, and it goes up at an angle, and it penetrates into that bore that the spark plug sits down inside of. That's a hard thing to say. And it's right at the level of the bottom of that bore. Three of the 4 of these were clogged. So I've unclogged those, and I blew out each spark plug hole recess very thoroughly and looked down in there. So what I ended up doing was I shot a little WD-40 down into them first because I'm out of PB Blaster at the moment, and then cracked them loose. Oh yeah, no problem whatsoever. Good. This is the replacement thermostat housing. As you can see, it's in pretty nice shape. I've already ultrasonically cleaned this out really well, cleaned the mating surfaces. This is the cover for it here. So this one's going to replace this one. So yeah, that's going to be a heck of a lot better than this. The only thing I need off of this one is that black bracket right there, which I'll take off here in a little bit. Well, if my Quaker Instant Oatmeal tastes metallic-y tomorrow, I guess I'll know why. I'm going to go ahead and test this sucker. It's an 82 centigrade thermostat. So we're at what, 56, 57, 59 and climbing. So let's see what happens when we get closer at 82. Hopefully it opens, or at least starts to open at that point. Because we got to make sure this one's good. And these things are really expensive, so I'd really like to use this one. I think we got a little activity going on now. We're at 90 centigrade and it is opening. You can see it. Yep, she's open. She's pretty wide open now. 90, 94. I say we run with it because it works. Just a little higher than it's rated for, but you know. Yeah, let's see what happens as the temperature comes down. Well, it's still open and it's around the rated temperature, and of course that's 82 right there, and it just looks like it wants to start closing. That's kind of cool. So right now it's right about 82 and it's still open, but only marginally. See, right now we're at 77, 78. So yeah, as far as thermostat goes, we're gonna run with it. It seems to operate properly. You know, it's gonna operate a little differently under conditions when it's in the motor. Temperature comes up a little slower than throwing it on the stove like that and just jam it. So it seems to work fine. So again, we're gonna run it. Folks, we're back to the point. I believe we're more in a chronological fashion. I apologize again for the kind of scatteredness, if you will, of the way these clips have been going. We are at the point we're gonna move forward. So I wanted to just quickly tell you about the spark plug wires. I replaced them with Dyna wires because I had an extra set of 7 mil. They are wrapped with a split loom for insulatory, is that a word? For insulation. They work really well. These particular coils, and I'll show you some B-roll clips here to illustrate. These particular coils, you can take the wires off the coils. You unscrew a cap, usually like a serrated cap. Then you just simply pull the wire out. There's a pin inside the coil that the center of the wire, like copper core, plugs into. And then that cap holds that end in securely. On this end, it's as simple as just screwing the resistor cap or whatever type of spark plug caps you got, and then screwed it in just, you know, standard way. It's got that screw thread dealio. And just make sure you have them the right length, and, you know, Bob's your uncle. So that's how I did these, and they came out real well because they were just terrible. Let's go ahead and talk about carbs real quick. You saw in video 1, we had all the carbs apart, pressure tested them, manufactured a new fuel tee for it, and all that stuff, all right? I did flow level check yesterday, which are good, and I wanted to check the jets because I actually haven't kind of really delved into the jets too far, especially since we're going to be doing pods. Let me tell you what the stock jetting is. Stock jetting is on the slow jets 38, and on the main jets it's either 108 or 110, depending on where you read it. I thought there was 110s in here, but you'll see here in a moment there wasn't. But there was 38s in it. What there were in the mains is some unstamped crap Chinese jet, probably from some junk rebuild kits. And so I wanted to see what size those were. The only way to do that is to put a pin gauge through them. In this case, it was 53 thou that went inside these jets, which is pretty big. Anything's big to me nowadays. So I took that number and went over here to the jet chart, and let's see, we've got 53 thou and a K in column. Translates over to a 137.5 jet size, which is whopping big for a stock setup the way this was set up. No way would that be proper. I've seen this before many times, these non or unstamped jets that they just throw in there and hope for the best. So I've labeled those 137 and 137.5K, and I'm going to put them in the drawer here. So what I did was I took the 38s out because I'm doing, you know, the pods, as I said. I wanted to go to like 42, and I don't have any 42 in that size jet. These are a different size jet where they're not the long ones, they're the short ones like this that go deep into the holes, said the wife. I took the 38s out of here and I drilled them out with a number 77 drill bit, which equates, using that chart over there I just showed you, decimal size, it equates to about a jet size of about 42 and a half. So put them back in. I can always go back to the original 38 size if I need to. On the main jets, I have a little drawer here for Dyna jets. Here it is, Dynajet jets. I found some 120s and some 124s that screw in. And measuring them up with the pin gauge, they measure to that side. Now 124 is not a standard jet size, at least in K, and it is in Bikini. But when I go to 125, it's pretty much that size, you know, as far as a pin gauge. So I know that those are accurate. So essentially we've got either a 124 or 125 main jet size, which is essentially where I was going for. I thought 120 would be okay, but I wanted to bump it up a little bit more. Let's go ahead and shove these suckers in. That was not fun. I'm going to run off the fuel tank and the fuel pump. I checked it by pumping some fuel into a can, and it's pumping fresh fuel. No problem with it. Here's one of the pods. They're 48 millimeter, something like that. I did check them yesterday. I do have a concern about their fitment though. As usual, I screwed up. These won't fit. They are not enough clearance next to each other. The carbs are too close together. So I didn't think of that when I ordered these. And frankly, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a set that will fit. So I think we're essentially stuck going back to the original airbox setup. And that means we need to change the jetting back. I don't know what we're going to do exactly with this right now, but I'd really like to fire it up. We might just fire it up as is, just for a few minutes, just to see it run, hear it run, make sure that everything else, the water pump sounds good, there's no whining or nothing, because I don't know what else to do besides get some different ones, and I didn't think of this. For some reason, it just didn't, you know, register in my brain that these are not going to fit. So, well, we're just going to try it as is, just for a little bit, see how it runs, see how it sounds, just open, because that was dumb. That was really dumb. I got those pods in like 2 weeks ago. I could have easily checked that. I never took them out of the box because I made some assumptions they were going to fit. Gonna have to crank a bit because fuel pump doesn't go until it cranks. So contact. Make sure that's not up too high. A little enricher. Sounds pretty good, actually. Oil lights out, that's good. Gonna smoke off the pipes, I know it. It might be a little rich. Then again, I just had the enricher on for a while. Let's see if it clears out. Nope. Yeah, I don't know. It smells a little rich, but I'm not surprised. Well, it's not terrible, but that definitely needs some jetting changes. Even if we did get a set of pods for it. I don't know why she's hanging on D-cell with that jetting though, but that would do it. That's why she's hanging. Well, that sounds good. That's better. Needs to be synchronized. Hey, it's a hell of a lot better than it was when I first got it. Okay, folks, that's it for video 2. I do have to get some content up on the channel, so I'm putting this up on my Friday normal release date. Today is Thursday, so it'll be tomorrow night when I get it up, maybe. But I feel I'm a little premature, I heard that before, on releasing this because we're not quite to the point where I'd really like to be. We're gonna get there. Now let me explain here really quick what we did after you saw the last clips in regards to the fact that we were running it without any air filters and the pods wouldn't fit. Took carbs back out and we're going back to the stock air box, the lower air box. The vice grips attached to them is for a reason I'll show you here in a second. The problem with this is I spent about 2 hours this afternoon seeing if I could squeeze that air box in. The only way you can do it, I should say squeeze the carbs in. The only way you can do it is get the air box in first and then get the carbs in. Generally when I do that, ducts have to yield as you push past them, this part of the carb. No matter what angle you got these at, they do not yield. You can see these things are stiffer than, and the thing is, they are just too damn stiff. Instead of rubber, they're really plastic now. So I've ordered another air box, the one I canceled originally. Yeah, that one. I reordered that one that I canceled before. And I found also in a separate eBay ad in Orlando, a guy selling 4 of the ducts that look pretty good. He says they're pliable and they're probably from perhaps a newer unit as far as, you said unit, as far as the Voyager goes. The lower air box I ordered comes with 4 ducts. So we'll see between those 4 and the 4 I ordered, hopefully we'll be able to get a lower air box I can actually fit in there. That air box has got the tabs on it that are broken off on this one and is just overall in a hell of a lot better shape. So again, the intention is we're going to go right back to stock. Now I've already made the jetting change for that. I think I mentioned earlier that I can't find the 110 main jets except one place. Now it'd be in my own stash. Yeah, I had them in there all the time. That CB750 kit that I bought, it was kind of like an ultimate kit. That has 2 or 3 other sets of 4 jets for K and carbs that are in the right range. I think I got a set of 108s and 110s, and I put the 110s in there. So I had them all along. And I got brand new 38s in the slows. So this is a stock configuration as far as I can tell. It depends on where you read it, but 38s are consistent, and it's either 108 or 110, so I'm going to go with the 110s. So once we get that all straightened out and we get the lower air box back in with the carbs and the upper air box hooked up and, you know, as far as connected via this ductwork here, and tighten up all of our little things, get the brakes done. That's a whole nother matter as far as the front master cylinder goes, but it is on the mend. Trust me, I'll get it done. You have to do a few other things to the bike, and then she's going to be ready for a little test shake, even without all the plastics on it. But you saw how it ran well. I'm happy with the way it ran, except for the fact that the jetting was off at that point. There are no coolant drips, no leaks. I rechecked the coolant level, had to add a little distilled water because I'm out of coolant right now. And so that's where we're at. So that brings you up to date. And again, this is where we're going to end video 2 and put it up on the channel. I really wanted to get a little further on this, but unfortunately it just ain't going to happen. I hope you got something out of it nonetheless, learned a few things. I showed you a few things that I did as far as different procedures, like on the spark plug wires. And there's a separate video coming out on the water pump debacle. You'll see that. Totally my fault, but I did fix it. And of course, other stuff coming up on the channel, but you have to subscribe, ring the bell, like, share, and do all that good stuff in order to be notified when I put crap like that up. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Appreciate the patience and understanding in this kind of a scatterbrained video. As always, don't just repair, restore. We'll catch you on the next video.